So now we're going to look at our first function that has a domain that is not all real numbers, and that's logarithms. So just remember, again, domain is the things you're allowed to plug in, and there's certain things we cannot plug into a log, and that's cy. So if we look at the graph of y equals log base 2 of x, it looks like this. And what x values I'm hitting? Well, this kind of just curves over here. So I'm hitting all these positive x values over here, but you can kind of see it goes down here. There's nothing written to the left of this graph. So I'm not hitting those x values, which means those are not in the domain of my function. So the simple way to say this is the things I can plug in is everything bigger than 0. So once I cross the x-axis, then I'm on my graph, and I can follow along all the x's after that. But it's really important. Our basic logs have x strictly bigger than 0. So there's not an equal sign under there. All right, so we have to remember whatever ends up going into the log has to be strictly bigger than 0. So we'll start putting more things in the parentheses, but whatever goes in the parentheses of a log has to be bigger than 0. So we're going to find the domain of this function. All right, this 2 out here is not going to really do anything. This 3 is not going to do anything. But inside the log, whatever is inside there has to be bigger than 0. Because eventually you want to take that expression and put it into a log. And we just saw we can't put negatives or 0 in. So we set up this inequality. We're going to subtract the 8 to the other side. We're going to divide. All right, so in order for this function to make sense, x has to be bigger than negative 4. And that keeps us from doing something bad with the log. All right, so our domain we can just write with our nice curly brackets like that. All right, one more example, another log. All we know is that when we're dealing with logs, whatever is in the parentheses of the log has to be bigger than 0. All right, because we have to make sure we're not putting something negative or 0 into a logarithm. In this case, I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides and divide by negative 6. And again, you're dividing by a negative here, so you have to remember to flip your inequality direction. If you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip that direction, and then you get your domain. All right, so with logarithms, you just have to remember that whatever is in the parentheses, you set bigger than 0 and solve that inequality.